Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today I want to talk a little bit about screencasting on Linux is moving closer, but unfortunately it's like, I'm not sure if it's moving closer or if it's moving further away. I'm going to cover the articles here today, but I don't actually have the equipment to test screencasting because there's a couple of little frustrations. We'll go ahead and talk about those in a bit. But where this actually started is I like doing the daily rounds, looking at what's going on in the Linux news. And this article here from OMG Ubuntu caught my eye. Gnome's native screencasting feature is taking shape. So this kind of got me a little excited. Of course, Gnome is integrating more and more stuff in. So they got in there, they stripped down to a very basic core, and now they're just cramming a bunch of stuff back into it. It actually kind of works, though, with what they're doing, because the stuff they're cramming back into it now is stuff that's more useful for a modern world. So, okay, we can't fault that in the slightest. Great idea, great plan. And so, but I started looking at this going, that looks kind of neat, doesn't have applications. Well, more and more systems are going digital or wireless. You might go to a conference that has a projector with like a Chromecast instead of having an HDMI cable, for example. And if we are still relying on HDMI cables to transmit our presentations, then that can be a problem. And so Gnome is starting to take this with having more tools inside of the Gnome shell itself to do screencasting, much like Android has built-in screencasting as of, I think, version 4.4. Apple has the AirPlay options, of course, within their ecosystem. But there is an open source standard called Miracast that has been out for about 10 or 15 years now. However, some of the development is a little stagnant. Some of the development has gone a little bit backwards. So I first saw this, and this is the first time that I've heard of thinking about doing a screencasting in Linux, other than I recall doing a video, at least I experimented with it, whether or not I got a video to work. I think I did, where I actually used screencasting via Steam. Which actually did work, albeit it was a little buggy at the time. And so let's go ahead and look at this, because the idea here is if you're using Gnome, there's going to be just a button built into the system that's going to allow you to cast to anything that runs. Now, their goal is eventually Chromecast as well. That may require a Google account. I don't know. I was looking, we'll get to that in a minute. The native screencasting feature, it basically utilizes the Gnome network display functionality, which I've never heard of, but apparently exists and has not even been updated for a couple of years. That's why it seems like some of the development's going backwards. But what they're doing here is there's in the Google Summer of Code projects for 2023, they wanted to add screen support, and they've actually implemented this that will be in the next version of Gnome that is coming out. And the idea here is, like, if you go up into your system settings up here, of course, now we've added the dark style, now we have the power modes, now we have the night mode, and Bluetooth is in here now. We have our Wi-Fi's in here now. Our VPN's in here now. Well, now actually there's a new screen capture system built in now that right now I think is actually working. I'll give it a try again here on my Debian eventually. But now the new one is going to be a screencast. Now this is going to support it's going to support your Miracast platforms and your Chromecast platforms is what their goal is, to have this built in. Now, of course, this sounds really cool. It's like, oh, is this going to push you to use Gnome? Not necessarily. You can actually use the same function without Gnome, because this is just the Gnome network display. They're just integrating this in. And the Gnome network display here is an application you can install via Flatpak or repository. It's in the Debian repository. And this is going to allow you to cast your screen or a window of your screen over to anything else running the Miracast or hopefully soon the Chromecast standard. Now, the thing I found very interesting is this requires Pipewire version 0.3.8 or higher on the host. Now, also notice it has not changes to version over 2 years ago. The problem I find with this is Pipewire current version is 0.3.77. So what the hell's going on here? Is this a typo over here, or is something going on over here? Do we have some form of regression, or what's going on? Because apparently the software package was built in the future, because 2 years ago they released a package for Pipewire that's not even out today. Very interesting indeed. Begs a few questions, but we can have fun with it either way, right? So I thought, okay, now we have the ability to do the screen sharing, and I confirmed that, my phone has screencasting available, and, other functions have screencasting available. There's some screencasting available. Okay, that's great news. Great news indeed. The problem is, how now do we share that onto our desktop? So this gets us to the next one. I thought, let's look into this. So there's an application called Miraclecast, which you can see some of the code is pretty old. Some of it is, let's see, there's some 10 months, 9 months ago. So not a lot of major updates. Here's your common path is your 7 years ago. And then we have a few instructions down here to build and install Miraclecast. Now, I did see a Miraclecast available in the Arch AUR, but it's completely stuck on checking dependencies after 20 minutes, not moving anywhere, and it seemed to crash Pamuk. I should probably try and run it through the terminal, but these are things I've been thinking about today. So we'll be working with this and experimenting down the road. Well, then I start looking around and, hey, there's a PPA for anything based on Ubuntu. Unfortunately, the latest version of this is Ubuntu 18. And so this is the last version. Of course, if you're paying attention, we are now on Ubuntu 23, and the current LTS is Ubuntu 22, which means they skipped Ubuntu 20 LTS and Ubuntu 22 LTS. So apparently the Miraclecast system, which is going to allow you on Linux to capture a screen, is defunct. So as far as capturing a screen on Linux, maybe we're moving a little bit further away. Maybe there's just stagnant development. But of course, the thing is that there's all forms of devices. And I started looking around at these. So I went over to Amazon, and there are a series of, I looked for Miracast devices. Now, first I checked local. Could I go to the local store, a Best Buy, a Walmart, a Target, and purchase a Miracast adapter device? Well, it turns out that pretty much all of the stores, all they sell are Chromecast devices, and I did some digging into all of those. Every single one of those require a constantly on internet connection and syncing to a Google account. So definitely that's out for me. I don't know about for you, if that's what you care about, whatever else. So now I'm thinking, do I purchase one of these guys here and buy it just for basic testing? And I looked at this one here. Hey, for 14 bucks, it might be worth doing another video on down the road. If I get enough likes or comments or people saying, hey, go do it down in the video down below, I'll go ahead and buy this guy, and we can test out sharing a Debian screen, for example, to any random monitor that I have laying around. That would be an interesting test to do. And the reason I want to look at specifically a Miracast is this is an open standard that we're now having the ability to cast, and the upcoming versions of Gnome are going to have the built-in one-button option. For the rest of us, we can always install the Flatpak, and now this requires it on the host. This means if you're building a Miraclecast, if you can, you have to have a version of Pipewire that is yet to be released. Makes me wonder if it's ever worked at all. These are some of the fun things we find inside Linux. Now, is there a huge market share for casting your screen? I think there will be in the future a market share for casting your screen. Particularly, I can think back to our church right now. They use like an Apple AirPlay. They have the sermons produced on an iPad, and then they use the AirPlay device to move the devices over to the TV. And we have a couple monitors in there, and that's where all the sermon notes and the verses and the illustrations for the sermon happen to go. Well, they were asking me about options to do this, because we were having issues with the internet, and the AirPlay apparently also goes through the internet at some form or another, because we kept on having issues with it. And our internet line is pretty bad coming into the building, and that seems to be the problem. So if you're running like a church setting and you want to do your sermons on something like Libre Impress to stay fully free and open source without giving any data up, without being on the internet, just a local area network. So if our internet goes down but our network is still there, is this going to allow you to work? That is a very good use case scenario. So it makes me wonder, yeah, maybe I should pick up this device, do some experimenting with this, and see if we can actually share this out to individual devices. And then I can test this out in our implementation at our church to see if this is a good, viable solution. And so with this, we start to see a little bit of hope. As I dug into it a little bit deeper, it turns out it's old hope. This is just press release buzz to get this network stack embedded into the core. But it did teach me that there is indeed a flat pack that is available that you can download and use and possibly share this over to some device like this, which is pretty cheap, to any HDMI port. So that's kind of going to be the future test we'll do. Stay tuned for a part 2 to this video down the road, but just seeing that screencasting on Linux is moving a little bit closer. Let me know your thoughts down below. Have you experimented with any of this? Pros, cons, all that kind of stuff. Let me know all those in the description or in the comments down below. I think I might go ahead. I've talked myself into picking me up one of these guys, so I'll go ahead and do that. And then what we're going to do here is give it another test. I've actually already installed this application on a few different things, and then we'll go ahead and test this out with an open standard. So stay tuned for an upcoming video, and I'll go ahead and record this now before I get moving on the road again. So with that, thanks for watching. Leave me your thoughts and your discussion points down below. I do realize there is a lot of new people that have subscribed to the channel recently, so just want to go ahead and give you guys a brief update where you can find other information. Mostly you can head on over to switchedtolinux.com, which is going to have all of the basic information. Down here at the bottom, we are on multiple video platforms. We also have down here a Matrix server, so if you want to join us on the Matrix server, I'm not sure if it's in the public directory yet, but you can always go to the website, click on the little element logo down there at the bottom. That's going to take you on over there. So the website switchedtolinux.com will have a lot of the other relevant information, including how you can support us with affiliates, monthly support, merch, things like that. With that, thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.